Let me share the last words that Swami Kriyananda shared publicly in his life, and it was Easter Sunday, a satsang that he gave 6 years ago. He said, the Bhagavad Gita states that even the greatest sinner, if he seeks God, if he meditates, if he thinks of Him, he will find Him. It's not just a possibility. It's impossible to avoid this. This is your destiny. So at Easter, think of others. Think of the fact that Easter is a reawakening of the soul. And try to share this beauty with others. When you see one who suffers, whose eyes that are crying, or eyes that are hard, try to send him a spear of divine joy. I've seen many times when I see a stranger, I try to give him a bit of joy, and I've seen that they change. And more recently, I've seen that even before I smile at people, they smile at me. You'll see that in this way, there will come a joy to you that you won't find in any other way. Serving God in others is serving yourself in others. Joy is the only thing that everyone seeks. Every man on earth wants happiness. You seek and seek and seek, and finally you'll find that helping others, loving God, having high ideals in life, these are the things that give you more. When you seek this happiness, you'll find joy. And finding joy, you'll find a bliss that's eternal. This is yours, and I want nothing more than this for all of you. I love you in this. And you must love everyone in the love of God, because He loves you. If you knew how much He loves you, you'd die for joy. It's a little difficult to add to that. Those who follow this path or who are open, we all have the opportunity to cultivate an inner relationship with Christ, with any of the masters. Gazing into their eyes, attuning yourself with their vibration, praying to them for answers. But it's also human nature to get things confused if we have a guru who is not in the body. It's very convenient to be tempted to choose to disregard their teachings and think, well, no one is watching me. And for this, it's important to, satsang is important, to be able to be with those who are living in the world, who are maybe a little bit beyond us on the spiritual path. See their example. See how they confront the same problems that you have in life. Ask their advice. Keep those channels open. Do everything you can to surround yourself with the Master's vibrations, with the vibration of God and higher consciousness every moment of the day. And Swami Kriyananda is a guru to many people, but he never accepted being called a guru. He felt that the relationship, the way that he could help people most was being a spiritual friend. Swamiji, an example of this, Swamiji was very creative, and often he felt an inspiration, and sometimes he just was convinced beyond any doubt that his guru was giving him an inner direction to do something or another. But even when it didn't involve other people, he wouldn't just accept and act on it. He would tell a group of friends, or maybe in a meeting, he would bring up this direction as an idea, tentatively, and he'd ask for ideas, he'd ask for feedback, and he'd listen to what everybody said. And sometimes the newest person in the meeting would have something valuable to contribute, and he would alter his application of that direction based on that feedback. Or he would invite others to do it with him. Or if he felt any resistance, he would feel, well, maybe these people aren't ready yet for this. I won't do it. I'll wait till the right moment. And the lesson for us here is that we strive not to be a teacher, not to be a boss, but to be a spiritual friend to those around us. And a spiritual friend is available to help, to lend a hand, and, only when asked, to give advice. And another lesson we can draw on this is that we can draw inwardly on Swamiji, on the great masters for help, and that we need to keep this channel alive and open. Swamiji lived in the modern world, had all of the same challenges that we do, and yet he always kept one foot in the consciousness of the great masters. And so seeing how he confronted problems is not only an example to us, but a source of strength and a source of courage and direction. And I knew Swamiji and studied with him for over 40 years. And much of that time I lived with him and could observe him at close quarters and see how he worked. And in the first 10 years I was in the Ananda monastery when I most needed direction. Swami was the head of that monastery. And then when I served as his secretary for 7 years, I was his full-time employee. And we know about the discipline of monasteries. Yoganandaji said that his father was strict, that his brother was severe, but the discipline of Sri Yukteswar could only be called drastic. And we all know about employers and employees. And given all of this, one would think that Swamiji would be authoritarian with me, at least some of the time. I never saw him that way in those 40 years. Many times he would be working late on some important project, and he knew that he could count on me to be there helping him in some way. And but he never assumed. He never told me, well, you're going to stay late tonight. He always asked, could you stay later? Is it convenient? Do you have any other plans tonight? He was always that divine friend. And he teaches us that if we want to be respected, that first, last, and always, we must respect. We must show consideration. We must show loyalty, and not just to those who expect it, but to the person in the lowliest role, to the newest person. And it's in this way that we become great. When I lived in the monastery, I had a photo this size of Yoganandaji, this photo, the last smile. And I had a little space for meditation, and I would have the photo right in front of me. And so I would gaze into his eyes and inwardly attune with Yoganandaji. And at first I never had the same relationship with Kriyananda. I had a little photo on my altar. I loved reading his books. I would see him often. I knew I could ask him questions. And then one day I thought to experiment. And in my meditation, I prayed to Swamiji. And I felt a contact. I asked a spiritual question. And then the next time I saw Swamiji, without him mentioning my question, he immediately gave me the answer to that particular question. I realized that opened a door for me, a door that's still open, that if I just go within, make that contact, ask, those answers are there. Maybe those answers are a feeling in the heart. Maybe they're words. Maybe it's something that happens. Maybe it's opening one of his books at random. And there is the answer. And so for all of us, that channel is open. And for all of the masters, they're always available to us. They're here. They're ready and wanting to help us in every way that we need, every way that we ask for. Thank you.
Swami has given us so much. One of the song that we played earlier was Swami Kriyananda singing in the spirit, and the message was that all souls are made to live in freedom, and we can claim our eternal right to live in that freedom. And that's what the masters do for us. I was going to talk a bit about Christ today. We had a nice little oratorio class yesterday. We went over Swami's beautiful, beautiful piece of music, many pieces of music together that comprised the oratorio about Christ's life. And it just reawakened how Swami's music really brought me onto this path. And it was wonderful. The theme that Keshava was just talking about, and also that runs throughout the Bible, throughout the scriptures, throughout the disciples talking about Christ's life, is the friendship that he offered. He offered divine friendship to sinners, to his disciples, to his enemies. He was always there with love and divine friendship. And the transforming power of that love changed so many people and brought so many people to the spiritual path that the world did not know what was coming in Christ's life. I'm certainly not going to go into his birth. That's saved for Christmas time. But I talk about the avatar descending. And the other thing that Swami has given us is the Festival of Light, which we are not doing today. But I'm going to read just little portions of it. A prayer of love went up from earth, and you responded. This is our prayer for help, our prayer for God, our prayer for someone who can teach us how to live a better life, how to love, how to have union with God. A prayer went up from earth and you responded. A ray of your light flashed out from the heart of infinity, burst downward through night skies of consciousness and was born on earth for the redemption of mankind in human form. Many times has that light descended, drawn to the earth by the call of aspiring love. This is the avatar who comes for us again and again. And in Jesus' life, after, of course, he had his birth, and then by 12, he was debating the scholars in the Jerusalem temple. There's 18 years that we know nothing about. They were just taken out of the Bible at some point. And he appears back on the scene at 30 years old, doing sadhana. And isn't that what, he's in the desert, he's in seclusion, and he's praying. And isn't that what all the great masters do? They come, they play out the Leela, like, yes, I need to meditate. I need to do my work on the spiritual path so I can still my mind and open my heart and have this merging of God. If they just appeared and started doing miracles and they were just born that way, then it makes us think, well, I can't do that. That's hard. That's a hard path for me to follow. But masters, Christ, they said, no, we did the sadhana. You must do it also. So while Christ is doing his sadhana and in seclusion, he gets tempted by Maya, by Satan. And Maya is just saying, hey, you can have it both ways. You can have everything in the world and you can have a spiritual life. And that seems sort of appealing sometimes, doesn't it? That's what I want. I want to be able to have my cake and eat it too. But Maya is saying, no, just come, follow me. You can get your security, your happiness in the world. And God is asking us to choose. Choose him first, love him first, and then he can take care of us. So Jesus says, get thee behind me, Satan. And he grows in power. Then he comes down into population and finds John the Baptist, and he gets baptized by John, who Master says was a guru of Jesus in a previous life. And so once he's baptized of John, there's a voice that comes from heaven and says, this is my son. Follow him. And so there are a few disciples around there that were following John. John says, no, you need to follow him. I'm going away. You need to follow him. So some of those disciples start following Jesus. And then Jesus starts to gather his other disciples. And those disciples are happy. They have this amazing master who is full of light, of wisdom, of divine friendship and love. He's teaching them all he knows. They're feeling like, this glorious spiritual destiny is also mine. And Christ is saying, everything I have, you can have. Everything I do, you can do. And so then he starts performing miracles. And the multitudes start coming. And he's redeeming sinners. And Mary Magdalene comes, so, a very sinful woman. But she has so much faith and so much love for Christ. That her love and her faith, Christ said, has saved you. Just, go and sin no more. Don't make any more mistakes. But what a promise for all of us, no matter how many mistakes we make, our soul is never tainted. We can always turn away from delusion and look at God, look at the light, and he's there waiting for us as a friend, saying, no problem. Just leave that behind you now. Now that you've gained wisdom, you can see through your delusion. And so he's gained. And the disciples even, they think, wow, this is just amazing. In just a short time, I'm going to be able to be like Jesus. I'm going to be a master also, or I'm going to be as wise as him. But and even the priests and the Pharisees and the Romans, they think there's this little prophet that's running around, and who are suddenly all these thousands and thousands of people following him. And so nobody knew it was going to be quite that big. And the disciples also didn't know it was going to be quite so complicated. They just thought, wow, we've got a great thing, and I'm just going to live a life of joy here. And then, of course, trouble hits, and he gets in trouble. He makes trouble with the priests. at the temple, and so they want to arrest him. And so Jesus knows this. As he comes in on Palm Sunday, which was last Sunday, he comes into Jerusalem on the back of a donkey, and people are singing Hosanna to the Lord in the highest. It's like many of the multitudes were saying, here's our new king. They're going to throw out the Romans. They're even going to throw out the corrupt priests, and we're going to have, and then Jesus is going to seize his kingdom. And there's some chaos and hysteria, and there's a lot of excitement, a lot of different things going on. But Jesus knows deep down, he's coming into Jerusalem to be killed. So Swami asks in this oratorio, who knew of the tragedy soon to befall? Jesus knew. Maybe the disciples had a little hint, because Jesus had already said, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. He's made some predictions about his death. Then at the Last Supper, he's there with his disciples. And he says, you call me master, but I call you friend. He said, what my Father has given me, I have given you. I have done the work of my Father. Now you do this work that I am giving you, because where I'm going, you won't be able to follow. And the disciples are like, why can't we follow you? Why can't we follow you? And so he washes the feet of his disciples. He's showing that humility and service and love to others. He said, as I've loved you, you must go and love others now. So during the Last Supper, if you know the story of the Bible, Jesus tells Judas, go ahead, go do what you have to do. So Judas goes to get the Roman soldiers. Jesus and his other disciples go to the Garden of Gethsemane. And Jesus then is sorrowful. But it is not sorrow for himself. It is sorrow for all these people that are about to make a really bad mistake. Here he incarnated to teach them about love, teach them about light, about God, and to alleviate their suffering. And yet, by killing him, they're about to get a lot more suffering. And he just kind of wants to rescue them where they are and say, I'm so sorry that this has to happen for them. And he even says, let this cup pass from me. Like, God, do I really have to do this? And it's not about he's not ready to face what he was born to do. It's that, isn't there an easier way? Can't I rescue these people from their own pain? And we can even ask ourselves, don't we do that sometimes with our friends, with our relatives? If I can only help them, they won't go through so much pain. If they'll only listen to me, if I can only tell them the perils of their path. But that's not the way. They have free will. And that's what Jesus says, God has set this whole thing in motion. It's already in motion. And everybody has chosen what they're doing. So he says, let thy will be done. And in that, he picks up the cross, basically. He has one-pointed determination and willpower. This is what I'm going to do. And so then the Romans are coming in with Judas to arrest him. And they say, who is Jesus? And he steps forward and says, I'm Jesus. And he steps forward with such power that the soldiers are all knocked back off their feet. He just steps forward and says, it's me. They just all fell back. His aura was so strong. So then he gets arrested, and he's now in the hands of Pilate, the Roman head of state there. And Pilate says, so are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus doesn't answer. And he says, oh, you need to talk to me. I'm the one who has your life in my hands. And Jesus says, you have no power that God did not give you. And he said, even now I could bring down legions of angels. But that's not God's will. I need to do God's will. So he took up the cross. He went up, he was put on the cross. And on the cross, what did he say? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So this is something that we can hardly imagine, because we identify with our bodies. We can't imagine being nailed to a cross and not thinking of ourselves, but thinking of others. just like, forgive them. Do not give them, this bad karma that's about to hit them. And so then it's the women, of course, that are at the cross. It's Mary, it's Martha, it's Jesus' mother, Mary, and also one disciple, James. The men are hiding, but the women are there. And so when they bring Jesus' body down, they put him in a tomb, and they wrap him in winding clothes, white winding clothes. And then that was Good Friday. So Saturday is the Sabbath. Nobody can move on the Sabbath. And Mary is just waiting for Sunday to come. So when Sunday morning comes, she runs to the tomb, and the stone has been rolled away. She goes into the tomb. Jesus is not lying where she just left him 2 days ago. But the clothes, the white clothes are there. And so she starts crying and saying, where have they taken my Lord? Where have they taken my Lord? She doesn't even see there's somebody else in the tomb with her. And she says, why are you crying? She said, because they've taken my Lord and I don't know where they put him. And then this man says, Mary. She says, Master, and drops at his feet. And he says, don't touch me because I'm not yet fully ascended. And so then she runs back where the other disciples are gathered, and they're in a locked room talking about this. None of them believe her. Like, this is this hysterical woman. None of them believe her. And he suddenly appears in the midst of them and says, my peace I give unto you. So through all the fear, through all of the darkness, through all the drama that was playing out, that is so real in front of us all the time, there Christ was all the time. My peace I give unto you. And it wasn't as it seemed. He didn't really disappear. Death did not have victory over life. Hatred did not have victory over love. And so there he appeared, and he said, now go and tell others and take my teachings and spread them, share them with all. And so this, the joy of the disciples at seeing the resurrected Christ was not the same joy they had at the beginning of the spiritual path when they thought, oh, this is going to be great. Here we're with this great master. We're experiencing love, joy, peace. But they've been through the darkness of the night, and the light will remain victorious. So through all our sacrifices, through all of the choices that we need to make in our lives of choosing God over matter, of choosing our soul over spirit, we know that the joy from being with Christ, being with our Guru, being with Divine Mother, that joy comes with sacrifices. It comes with obstacles. But the power and the joy become deeper, more mature, more wise, more strong when we emerge fully in the light after we've gone through that trial by fire. So I wanted to read two more things. Greater can no love be than this, from a life of infinite joy and freedom in God, willingly to embrace limitation, pain, and death for the salvation of mankind. Such ever has been the sacrifice of the great masters for the world.